The book of Genesis opens with a poetic yet controversial claim that the universe, the earth, and all life on it were created by a divine being in just 6 days. For centuries, this narrative was taken as literal truth by millions. But in the 21st century, with a vast amount of scientific data at our fingertips, it is astonishing that anyone still believes this story actually happened as written. The 6-day creation story is not only scientifically inaccurate but demonstrably impossible when compared to what we now understand about cosmology, geology, biology, and evolution. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, many religious groups continue to defend this ancient myth, not because it holds up to scrutiny, but because their entire theological and economic structure would collapse without it. This text will explore why the Genesis account is scientifically untenable and how its defenders rely on circular logic, denial of facts, and outright fanaticism to keep the myth alive. Genesis 1 verses 3 to 5 describes the creation of light on the first day. Let there be light, even though the sun, moon, and stars are not created until day 4. This immediately poses a serious problem. Light, as we understand it, is a form of electromagnetic radiation emitted by a source, primarily stars like our sun. Without a source, what light could possibly exist? How can you have day and night before there is a sun to define those periods? Apologists often claim that God himself was the light, or that a temporary light source was created and later replaced by the sun. But this is speculative at best, and it contradicts the very text they claim to take literally. Scientifically, this is absurd. The presence of light necessitates a source. No sun, no photons, no day or night. On day 2, God supposedly separates the waters below from the waters above, creating a firmament, essentially a solid dome over the earth. Genesis 1 verses 6 to 8. This idea is based on ancient cosmologies that imagined the sky as a hard shell holding back celestial oceans. It made sense thousands of years ago, when people didn't know what stars were, or that Earth was a planet in a vast galaxy. Modern science has shown us that there is no dome above the Earth and no water above it. The atmosphere is composed of gases, not held-up oceans. The waters above concept is not only scientifically false but an outdated relic of mythological thinking. Still, some believers insist the waters above refer to clouds or some mysterious water canopy. But this canopy theory fails catastrophically under the weight of physics. A layer of water suspended above the Earth would cause catastrophic greenhouse heating and gravitational collapse, neither of which is mentioned in Genesis or seen in reality. According to Genesis 1 verses 9 to 13, on day 3, God gathers the waters to reveal dry land and creates all plant life, trees, grasses, and fruits, before the sun even exists. Again, this is a massive problem. Photosynthesis, the process that allows plants to live and grow, requires sunlight. Without it, not even algae can survive. Even if we generously interpret the light from day 1 as sufficient for plant growth, the absence of a stable solar cycle, day/night rhythm, UV radiation, temperature regulation, would make plant life unsustainable. This ordering is not just scientifically inaccurate, it's impossible. Religious defenders argue that God can create plants with built-in energy reserves, or that he temporarily provided the right conditions. But these are ad hoc excuses. If the text says one thing and reality says another, the intellectually honest thing to do is reconsider the text, not reality. The creation of the sun, moon, and stars on day 4, Genesis 1 verses 14 to 19, contradicts everything we know from astronomy. According to the current model of stellar and planetary formation, stars come first. The sun formed from a cloud of gas and dust roughly 4.6 billion years ago. The planets, including Earth, formed afterward from the remaining material in a protoplanetary disk. Genesis has this backwards. Earth comes before the sun, which is scientifically indefensible. Gravity alone makes this ordering impossible. Earth cannot exist without the gravitational anchor of the sun to orbit around. Without the sun's gravity, Earth would have no stable position in space. Defenders sometimes suggest that Genesis is describing things from an Earth-based perspective. But this doesn't solve the issue. Even from Earth's perspective, the stars are visible before the advent of plants or dry land. Again, the explanation collapses under its own inconsistency. Genesis 1 verses 20 to 23 describes God creating marine animals and birds on day 5. This may seem more plausible at first glance. Marine life did precede terrestrial life in evolutionary history. However, birds did not come next. Birds evolved from land-dwelling theropod dinosaurs much later in Earth's history. According to the fossil record, marine life began billions of years ago, and land animals appeared long before birds. The biblical sequence again gets the order wrong. It pairs fish and birds as if they were created together, an error understandable from an ancient human perspective, but not from a divine one. Those who cling to this story often reject evolution entirely, preferring to believe that God created each kind separately. This forces them to dismiss all fossil evidence, DNA relationships, embryology, and observed speciation, essentially rejecting the entire foundation of modern biology. On day 6, Genesis 1 verses 24 to 31, God creates all land animals and then human beings, man and woman, on the same day. This scenario is rife with scientific problems. First, land animals did not all appear simultaneously. They evolved over hundreds of millions of years. Mammals, reptiles, and insects each have complex evolutionary histories. Grouping them all into a single day of creation is not just simplistic, it's misleading. Second, modern humans, Homo sapiens, are a very recent addition to Earth's biosphere. We've only existed for about 300,000 years, while dinosaurs and other animals dominated the Earth for hundreds of millions of years before us. Yet the Genesis narrative squeezes all of this into a 24-hour period. And perhaps most comically, Genesis 2 claims that Adam named all the animals on the same day he was created. Imagine one man cataloging millions of species before dinner. Even with AI assistance, this would be absurd. Genesis 2 verse 2 says that on the seventh day, God rested. But why would an omnipotent being need to rest? The concept of divine fatigue makes no sense unless we interpret this story as a human invention, reflecting ancient ideas about gods and kings who work and need rest. If God is beyond time, energy, and matter, then the entire creation week already unravels. Time-bound sequences, days, nights, work, rest, don't apply to a timeless being. The days of Genesis are clearly modeled on human work weeks, not cosmic processes. Some apologists claim the 7-day pattern is metaphorical, while still insisting that the events are real. But if it's metaphorical, why cling to the literal 6-day time frame? The logical gymnastics betray a deeper motivation, preserving the myth, not uncovering the truth. Why do so many religious leaders still defend this obviously flawed account? Because if Genesis falls, the rest of the theological structure becomes shaky. The doctrine of original sin, the need for salvation, and the justification for religious authority all hinge on Genesis being true. Defending creationism is not about facts, it's about control. If the Bible is shown to be mythological, then the pastors, priests, and elders lose their divine authority. Their sermons become mere opinions. Their tithes dry up. Their power fades. That's why entire institutions are built around defending a literal 6-day creation, funding museums that display humans riding dinosaurs and launching pseudoscientific journals to sow doubt about evolution. It's not science. They don't do experiments, submit peer-reviewed papers, or engage with real evidence. It's a performance designed to keep the faithful in line. In the age of DNA sequencing, space telescopes, radiometric dating, and fossil records, believing in a literal 6-day creation is no longer just naive. It's a form of intellectual dishonesty. It is a willful denial of evidence in favor of dogma. People are free to hold religious beliefs. But those beliefs should not distort education, science, or public policy. Clinging to ancient myths while ignoring the overwhelming data we now have about the universe is irresponsible. It holds back progress and teaches children to distrust reality. If your faith requires denying facts, maybe it's not faith, it's fear. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting or thought-provoking, please consider giving it a like, sharing it with others, and leaving a comment with your opinion. I'd love to hear what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future content. See you in the next video.